matter. The reason I had this brought back, it seems to me that there are a number of points of contention. It's pretty obvious, the obviousness of the action, which occurred on February 24th, should not require explanation in light of the fact that there has been such opposition to doing what is right, for example, getting the best deal for the ratepayers of Dixon by using a fair and equitable bidding process. A deal discussion is now necessitated. What was supposed to be strictly a policy decision on from where the funds were coming to pay for street sweeping service somehow evolved into the creation of a, quote, sweetheart deal with our garbage franchisee, Dixon Sanitary Service, which is a division of NorCal Industries. I say sweetheart deal because the cost of $169,000, which included a 10% franchise fee, somehow was reduced by more than $16,900 to a total of only $130,162. Since we have this explanation, and I didn't have that at the time that I wrote this, I think that the public now understands what has happened. But the point is, the amount billed using this procedure could as easily have been $250,000 as the amount that miraculously appeared to be substantially the same as what we are currently charged. It would appear to anyone but the naive that this is a ploy to stave off any further objection to pulling away the contract from the firm which won it fairly through the bidding process. As much as the initial staff report and conclusion was a one direction toward a solitary provider, this staff report includes the attorney's briefing, likewise provides only reasons why the citizens are going to get stuck with defined options. And I'd like to discuss the staff report on the things that I've highlighted in here. And the first thing under policy discussion was the main policy question was how the service should be funded, whether it should be coming out of the general fund or whether it should be paid for by the citizens. The point was, and still is, that money, that it was funding this service, was the citizens' money through the tax known as a franchise fee. At the bottom of the first page, it says the policy issue before the City Council on February 24th consisted of choosing between the option to continue directly contracting for street sweeping services, thereby paying for street sweeping out of the general fund, or to revise the solid waste franchise agreement as it was previously to include street sweeping and thereby return the cost of that service to residential and commercial property owners. As I said, the property owners are already paying for it one way or another. There's also a third option that wasn't included here and is being ignored, and that is to have this paid for out of the general fund, or not out of the general fund, excuse me, but by the citizens, and have a independent provider pay for this. That option is ignored throughout this whole discussion. On page 2, they talk about what would happen with the general fund continuing to support street sweeping service. Number 2, it says authorize the city clerk to advertise for bids for the service at either the same or reduced level of service. That's not precluded. We could still have done that. Perform the service with city staff or purchase leased or required equipment. That really wasn't considered as an option. It seemed to me that we focused just on either continuing paying for it out of the general fund or giving it back to the franchisee. Under funding for street sweeping to be removed from the general fund. If the policy direction was to remove the cost of street sweeping from the general fund, the City Council would then have the following options. And under it, again, there's only the two options. One of them is to cancel street sweeping services. I think that that is a scare tactic that's unnecessary because, as I said, we could still have contracted with somebody else and have it billed. We have a number of ways to bill for these services. The process. The one from the current contractor was provided to give the council information to approximate the cost of service should the policy decision be for the service to be continued to be funded out of the general fund. I found this to be a correct statement, completely incorrect. The one from the contractor, there was no informal proposal He simply asked for costs, he provided costs. He wasn't even told that this was going to be what the purpose of it was, other than to ascertain costs. The city attorney has advised, it's on page 3 at the top, has advised that based on state and local ordinances, the city is under no obligation to bid out the services, but may instead amend the solid waste franchise agreement. To me, that means that we could bid out the service if we wanted to, or we may amend the franchise agreement. We did not consider bidding this out at all. And therefore, we ended up with a higher cost to the citizens than is what is necessary. Under notice to existing contractor, the current contractor was not notified of the February 24th council agenda item, as the item had to do with policy direction regarding funding. The council was not asked to consider or award a bid for the service, but you did. You actually did award a bid for the, or not a bid, you awarded the contract to somebody else without taking a bid. And in effect, that is exactly what you did. You considered taking it away from this person who was providing it at a lower cost, and that to me is wrong. I'm looking out for the citizens of Dixon. If the rest of you don't want to do that, that's your choice. Under Dixon Sanitary Service, it says, with the service under the franchise agreement, the cost of the service is transferred from the city to residential and commercial customers. Well, like I say, we're paying a 10% tax. And as far as I'm concerned, the general fund purpose is not specifically in one direction. There are things that we can benefit our citizens by, and this is one of them. As mentioned above, with this policy decision, the only option was for the service to transfer back to Dixon Sanitary Service under the solid waste franchise agreement. I have a word written down here which isn't very nice, but I think that is being very short-sighted, that is the only decision that we could have made. The final thing on here is the motion for reconsideration. Nothing prohibits a council from readdressing an issue where we have a feeling that an error was made. We could come back the next week. This motion for reconsideration is specifically for the meeting when it occurs. If we decided to change our mind and go in a different direction, I think that's a reasonable possibility at any time. On to Mr. Dean's brief. It says under the background, under number 2, we could pursue the bidding process for a new street sweeping service agreement to pay for from the general fund. And there were 4 things under this, and the council was given 4 options. I don't remember 4 options. Like I say, I think we only discussed the 2 of them. Under legal analysis, the purpose of competitive bidding, and this is important, and this is part of the public contract code that I brought up at that meeting. The purpose of competitive bidding, or rather not that meeting, but the prior one where I asked to have this placed on the agenda, are to protect the public from misuse of public funds, provide all qualified bidders with a fair opportunity to enter the bidding process, thereby stimulating competition in a manner conducive to sound fiscal practices. And 3, to eliminate favoritism, fraud, and corruption in the awarding of public contracts. Now, nobody is accusing anybody of doing any of these things, but there's the appearance of doing these sorts of things by the way that we conducted ourselves that night. And also not allowing the person that was providing the contract to come forward and speak to the issue. Under Dixon City Code, it says a local agency is not permitted to adopt policies and procedures that are inconsistent or conflict with state law, but a local agency is permitted to adopt stricter requirements than those adopted by the state, including requirements related to the bidding of public contracts. I believe we have that in our city code. It does not say in there that it has to be city money.